Sal Berry.
If you're a losing coach, you're a slave driver. And if you're a winning coach, you're a taskmaster. But you're still the same guy.
And Tim Parish.
No one's going to succeed in Toronto. There's too much media. There's too many microphones and cameras in your face. If you want to keep a job, don't work for Toronto.
This is the Puck Junk Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Puck Junk Podcast. I'm Sal Berry, and along with me is Tim Parish, a.k.a. The Real DFG on Twitter.
Yo, yo.
Yo, yo. Yeah. Shout out to the crowd, to the 14 listeners. But I thank every one of you, 14 beautiful people. So we're going to talk about what's new in hockey cards. Tim's going to talk about some eBay items. I'm going to talk about that card show that I did the past weekend, not as a buyer, but as a seller. And then we're going to talk about some stuff around the NHL. As far as what's coming out now, just a little bit of a recap about the Topps Now sticker set. Week 6 had a print run of 846 packs. Would have been 847 if I got my order into them.
Did you ever get a response back, by the way?
I did, actually, and they just basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was like 2 sentences. It says, we're sorry, we can't help you. The Week 6 sticker pack is no longer available for sale at this time. And that was it. Not even like, oh, but, we'll still let you buy the All-Star sticker set or whatever. So I just feel like a weenie. It's like missing one class and not getting that perfect attendance and then not getting the bonus for perfect attendance. But you didn't really miss class. You were just 5 minutes late.
I guess I could see it that way.
So Week 6 print run, 846 packs, should have been 847. Week 7, 788 packs. The Week 8 checklist so far is Henrik Lundqvist, John Carlson, Morgan Frost, New York Islanders, Cale Makar, Emil Bermstrom, Andrei Vasilevsky, and then subjects 8 and 9 are still to be determined. As far as Upper Deck game dated moments for Week 7, card number 19 is Connor McDavid's 6-point game. Card number 20 is Steven Stamkos becoming the 9th active player to reach 400 goals. And I'll tell you this, I'd be really surprised if the following week they didn't have a Patrick Kane card because he just recorded his 600th assist. Which that's one of those milestone numbers, 400 goals, 600 assists, 1,000 points, right? Those are all like the big milestones. So I'll probably buy that card when it comes out, if it comes out the following week, because I like to pick and choose if I buy them at all.
There's been an awful lot of those lately, especially guys hitting 1,000 games and the point totals and everything else. I mean, It's been an exciting year watching hockey so far.
So far, so good. And then coming soon, Upper Deck Black Diamond comes out on November 27th. The top sticker hockey set, I guess that got pushed back a little bit. That's coming out December 4th, although they're already for sale on the Topps website. Maybe it's a pre-order. Upper Deck Synergy, December 11th. And Upper Deck Buybacks, which is a set where they basically bought back cards and they're reselling them. I guess they're autographed. I think it's like 1 card per box. I'm not excited about those last 2 releases, honestly. I got a few boxes of Synergy last year, and I was just kind of like, these are kind of neat, but I don't know. I wasn't like super excited. I like the idea of plastic trading cards instead of cardboard. I mean, they could be plastic. It's expensive, but they could be made out of plastic now. But I didn't like the fact that they had that 3-dimensionalness to them. Like, that's cool, but I would just like a set of, like, trading cards, kind of like how Upper Deck Ice for, well, I guess most of the time is like those plastic cards. They don't even have to be see-through. And then as far as a buyback set, I see that, and I just think, okay, how much is that going to cost for 1 card?
Yeah. I see those from other years pop up on the secondary market all the time, and it's another one of those too rich for my blood boxes.
So let's see. And another thing I want to talk about.
I'm not allowed to buy Synergy, by the way, just to
Why
get
not?
back to that. Because my wife hates that set.
Why does she hate it?
She can't stand the way it looks. She thinks it's ugly. So I've tried anytime we've been looking at boxes and we're like, all right, what do we want? I'm like, Synergy's only, $90 or whatever. And she's like, nope, I'm out. So
Yeah, I
she doesn't like the foofy color. Like she didn't like the MVP color and contours. She didn't like the set when it was its own set either. And Synergy, I guess, reminds her of that. She doesn't like it. So
not a fan of the puffy and or die cut cards.
yeah, I don't know. She likes shiny prism type stuff. So that's more what she's into. So
I understand. So I guess I'll talk about this. So over the last weekend was the Chicago Sports Spectacular in actually in Rosemont, which is a suburb of Chicago, sort of halfway between the airport, or it's almost all the way to the airport, the O'Hare Airport in Chicago. So it's Chicago for all intents and purposes. That show's been around forever. It's been around since the 90s when it was sponsored by the Sun Times. A lot of people who've been going it for years still call it the Sun Times show because the Chicago Sun Times newspaper was the major sponsor of it. And it's just funny because like even I'll say to like Tim, yeah, you go into the Sun Times show, and he knows what I mean. And I think
and even if you Google it, you can put Suntime Show and it still pops up.
it does. It does. So I went to the Sun Times show, aka the Chicago Sports Spectacular, last weekend, and this time I went as a seller, not as a buyer. I love walking around looking at stuff, having time to dig through quarter boxes and stuff like that. I usually go all 3 days. This time around, I didn't have time for that. I have an acquaintance who sells old vintage sports memorabilia going back as far as he can. I mean, he has some really like rare, unique, interesting stuff, but he has a lot of hockey stuff. That's his passion. That's what he has a lot of good hockey items. So I said to him, I said, can I just sublet a little bit of your booth space? Because I didn't need a whole booth space. I didn't want to invest that much money in it. And he was cool with it. I gave him a hand at the show. We helped each other out. And I was selling the Puck Junk t-shirts. I sold a t-shirt, a new shirt in the collection, which I got to put up on the site. Going to do that soon. It's a Blades of Steel t-shirt. I actually got
Which is
permission.
awesome, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I got permission from the artist to use it. It's the original artwork before it has the logo put on it, the Nintendo seal of quality put on it, all of the different things. So it's, as far as I know, it's the only Blades of Steel shirt that has the artwork without any logos or anything on it.
Yeah, I've never seen one. That's why I thought it was cool.
I was selling shirts, and it was a slow show. Granted, the demographic that I'm reaching with these are people who like hockey and or people who like hockey cards, because I got a couple of shirts that appeal to beer league players. A couple, or my Blade shirt, which is for like people who like hockey and video games or nostalgia. But Friday was really slow. Sunday was really slow. Saturday was busy. Not like super busy, but it was busy. And a lot of the dealers have told me, I've been doing this show for years and this is one of the worst I've seen. So why was it bad? So the Bears played on Sunday. That always gives a little bit of a dip in attendance. I want to say that even though there were a lot of autograph signers, maybe there weren't enough of a certain type. I mean, I remember the fall 2016 show. That was right after the Cubs won the World Series. So it was that November. The place was mobbed. It was insane. It was crazy just to get into that show, especially on Friday when a lot of the players. I don't know if they were all signing on Friday, but I know that like it was crazy to get into the show. Like people were lined up to buy a ticket. People were lined up to get into the show. People were lined up to buy an autograph ticket then, and it was just crazy. So, I mean, at that time, obviously, it was hitting the right demographic at the right time because the Cubs just won the World Series and they had a bunch of Cubs players there signing autographs. This time, it just felt slow, like, and that's okay. I mean, it was a good experience for me because I haven't done a show in a long time. The last time I did a show was 10 years ago, and it was at some suburban community center, and that just had really bad attendance. And like I said, it's probably better to be at a big show that's slow because people are still going to come to it and they're going to walk around. And versus a little show that's slow, because that means that no one's coming. Even a big show is going to have, if it's got low attendance, it still might have like 100 people or whatever, like say 2 o'clock or whatever. But it was funny because dealers were actually packing up early on Sunday, and they were announcing over the loudspeaker, please do not pack up early, as like the voice over the rattle of people packing up their stuff early, that sound of tables being folded up and boxes being tossed around, and you just know that like it's contagious. It's like the domino effect, like that sound just ripples through the convention space.
Well, and all it takes is one. Whoever breaks the seal first, then it's like you're right. It's a domino effect.
Well, it's
then the next guy
usually
goes, and the next guy goes, and so on and so forth.
Well, Plastic Man usually doesn't stick around on Sunday. Oh, I got a Plastic Man story for you.
Oh boy.
Okay,
Plastic Man story. Here we go.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this is a good awkward story. So Friday, Shelly came to help me set up, and then she said, "You know what? This looks like fun. I think I want to stick around." I said, "Cool. Hey, I want you to know more about my hobby. I'm grateful for you helping me unload and set up and stuff. And if you just want to set up, or if you want to just stick around, that's cool." I said, go walk around, talk to people, see stuff, whatever. And like she walks around and she's back in like 10 minutes. She's like, "Okay, I've seen everything." I'm like, "The whole show?" She's like, "Yeah, I've seen everything." I'm like, "Hon, you were only gone from the table for like 10 minutes. She goes, "Yeah, no, I walked around. I saw everything." I'm like, "Well, did you see those aisles over there?" "Yeah, I saw those too." "Oh, okay." And then all the auction houses and their tables. So yeah, I looked at those. I mean, there's nothing to look at other than that they have the catalogs. But she like literally walked the whole show floor in like 10 minutes. And I'm just like, I can't even make it down an aisle in 10 minutes because I'm always stopping and looking and buying. And I think she was just so. I say to her, I said, "Well, did you see Plastic Man?" She's like, "He's here." I'm like, "Of course he's here." So for those of you who don't know, there is a card seller from Canada who has very high-end hockey cards. He deals in pre-74. He has tons of stuff. He has everything I want. The problem is that his prices are really high. They're like higher than what you think they should be, and sometimes even higher than that. And if you ask him about that, he'll be like, "Well, I have to drive in, and the Canadian exchange rate, blah, blah, blah." So it's like the prices suck. I almost never buy anything from him, but I like looking at his cards. The reason why we call him Plastic Man is because he puts this heavy vinyl clear plastic over his tables. It's like the plastic that your Aunt Betty used to wrap her couch in back in the 70s and 80s, so that you couldn't like spill anything on it. You're nodding your head in agreement. Did everybody do that?
Everybody did that. Anybody
Yeah.
that had a house with the extra living room, then they called it the sitting room. Yeah,
Yeah.
here's the sitting room that you're not allowed to sit in.
Right, I know. I mean, it was just fun sitting on a couch that's supposed to be comfortable, and you stick to it. It was just like
so
yeah.
And his methodology is, here's the hockey cards that you're not allowed to touch or pick up or breathe on.
Right. So anyway, so I say to Shelly, I said, "Yeah, so Plastic Man's here." And she's like, "Really? Really? Oh, cool. I want to meet him. I want to see him," right? So I had already talked to him because I stopped at his table and he looked up at me and smiled and acknowledged, "Hey, how you doing?" Whatever. I mean, we're always cordial. So then we come back, and so he sees me back like 5 minutes later. I pointed to Shelly and I just said, "Yeah, I thought I'd get some Christmas shopping done." And I was about to say and tell her what I want for Christmas, meaning like all these cards that he had. When he heard Christmas, he's like, "Oh, you brought me a Christmas present." And he like puts his arms out, like he puts his hands out a little bit like he wants to hug her. And I'm just like, "Oh, yeah, okay, sure." And she's just like, "Oh, hi, I'm Shelly." And she kind of gave him a little hug. And then I'm like, "Oh, yeah, well, I guess I'll trade her. Do you have any Parkhurst cards?" But we walked away and I'm like, "Well, that was awkward." She's like, "Yeah, that was awkward. What's up with that?" I said, "I don't know. I was just going to say like, yeah, I brought my girlfriend so she could get all her Christmas shopping done here." And he took it to mean that I was dropping you off as a Christmas present. And like either my delivery of the joke didn't work or he just, I don't know. And this is why we remain cordial, but I never talked to him because I cannot build a rapport with him like I can with other people who are obsessed with hockey for some reason. There's like this, there's like this clear, protective, I don't know what you'd call it, but there's like this clear protective like sheet between us that just can't quite put my finger on it.
Yeah, I don't know what that could be. Yeah. It's really, I have to get to the bottom of that at
Yeah,
some point.
right. Yeah, the bottom of the clear tablecloth. It was funny though, because Shelly was like, "Man, that." She's like, "When I thought plastic, she's like, I thought he just had like a plastic sheet of like plexiglass, like on the cards, like over the cards." She's like, "This is like heavy duty, like tablecloth plastic, yeah, like couch plastic."
Yep.
Which so
It's heavy duty stuff.
so anyway, so yeah, so that was that was one fun little experience. But otherwise, yeah, I just kind of pretty much stayed at my table. I managed to pick up a few odd cards that I need to fill sets. Nothing much, just some like higher end stuff. Just I didn't have a lot of time to walk around, and nor did I, because I wanted to be there, even if people don't buy stuff for me, just to talk to people. I mean, enough people stop by that just said, "Oh, hey, I know your blog," or "Hey, these are cool," or like people would say, "Hey, these are cool. Do you have 3X or 4X?"
Yeah, I could see that.
Anyway, so that was my experience with the show. Tim, you didn't make it out to the show, but I don't think you missed much this time.
Okay.
It was slow. It was it felt smaller. The aisles felt wider. Does that make sense? Like I felt like there was less tables, so they made the aisles wider.
Yeah, I mean, there'd definitely be more walkway space if they either didn't have the dealer participation, or plus if the people weren't there to fill the aisles up, they definitely look bigger.
It
I'm
was
kind of
funny.
surprised at that because that autograph lineup was pretty tight for the 3 days. So I wonder how they did over there. Did you notice anything as far as lines go?
I had a pretty good view of the autograph area because I was facing it, but I had a couple of other um I had like one other row of tables in front of where I was. So I didn't have like a direct view, but I had a pretty good view. And I don't know. I mean, it's there were people getting autographs. There were some players who canceled for one reason or another. I know one guy missed his flight. I forgot who it was, but he missed his flight. It was a big name, and he missed his flight, and it was canceled. And then like um, Eric Estrada, the actor from
Yeah.
Chips, he canceled. It was funny because
Oh,
they announced it, and I yelled no, and everybody started laughing, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. He
no
was really.
punch. That sucks.
Hey man, Ponch was the bomb when I was like 5. I thought Chips was the coolest show. Like before like that little area between like the first Star Wars movie and the second Star Wars movie, because I was born in '75, so I was too young to remember Star Wars in '77. But then like when Empire Strikes Back came out in like 1980, my whole world was Star Wars from that point forward. I mean, I liked other things. So like Chips was like I was probably 4 when I remember watching it and just thinking it was the coolest show because they were policemen and they were on motorcycles, and I just thought that was like the coolest thing in the world. And then there was Battlestar Galactica, and then like when Star Wars came out, and it was like, oh my god, the show is just or the movie was just when you're 5, everything's like way cooler.
Did all the Happy Days guys show up?
Uh Yeah, actually, they all showed up. I mean, there was Donnie Most, um, Henry Winkler.
And
Uh,
and Potsy.
oh yeah, and Potsy. Thank you. And I was just thinking,
I
or
don't know
Ron
what his
Howard.
real name is. It's just Potsy.
I think that was Donnie Most.
No, Donnie Most was Ralph. Ralph Malph.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember the Potsy's real name.
I mean, I
Sure
watched that.
somebody does.
I watched that show, and I remember Fonzie, and that's about it. But
Yeah.
again, I was a kid, so it wasn't like, oh, Happy Days is on, I have to watch it. It was just like, I'm just one of those kids that always had the TV on, and I'll
Yeah.
just leave it on this channel now, and then I'll change channels in a half an hour and see what else is on. So we skipped eBay items last time, so why don't we talk about those today? You found some interesting hockey items on eBay?
Yeah, so you know, the high ticket items tend to be dominated by a couple different sellers, as we discuss all the time. And I think I'm getting to the point where I'm not sure whether or not I absolutely trust the final sale prices on these because as we all know, um, there's a variety of things that go on out there in the world with some unscrupulous people and pushing card prices up higher than they probably should be. But um, I looked at this past week to see kind of what's out there, and it's a lot of the usual suspects. But a couple things I wanted to point out: this past week, the highest selling price for a card, at least for a modern day card, was the Cup McDavid RPA. A BGS 9 sold for 22,000, and that was a regular auction. It went with 34 bids. Again, I can't verify whether it was paid for or not to complete the auction, and I don't know if any of that was, bids thrown out there just to kind of push price up. But
You mean
20.
shill bidding?
Oh, I didn't want to use the word,
Oh,
but
you could say
yeah,
shill
that's
bidding.
fine.
It's
So there was actually a Crosby RPA from the Cup from 0506 that sold for a little higher than that, but I do have a little bit of background on that one, and I do know that that one was not paid for.
okay.
It sold for about 25,000. Um, and that was only an 8 grade. So eights pretty much, if you look at graded cards, 7s and 8s are basic, would be considered like the basic card. So I know
What
in
an
a lot
eight
of,
is? Oh, is that
yeah,
like near mint?
yeah, between a 7 and an 8, a lot of times you see based off of that grade, that would be like, if you open a pack and pull out a card, it's at least going to be a 7 or an 8 right off the bat. Now, it may be a 9, maybe a 10, but I know we've had that discussion before is how can a pack fresh card not be a 10? But,
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there because I'm not a grader and I'm not an expert at it, and neither are the graders. A 51 Gordie Howe rookie. I don't know if we had a Gordie Howe rookie yet. This was actually one of the better quality ones I've seen in a while. A 7.5, 7.5, which is considered near mint. Sold for 21,000. Had 52 bids. That was a pretty good one. From the same set, the Rocket Richard card, which was a PSA 8, sold for about 18,000. That was also at auction with 38 bids. So
Wow.
a lot of high dollar this past week. There was a Bobby Orr, and of course you can find the Gretzky's in the top pile again. But an O-Pee-Chee Lemieux rookie sold a Gem Mint 10. It's been a while since I've seen one of those, but 50 bids, close of auction went almost 11,000. It was 10,889 was the closing bid on that one. So there you
Wow.
go, Gem Mint 10 O-Pee-Chee Lemieux rookie at $10,899, which is absolutely crazy. I'd love to get my hands on one in pretty decent shape. Something I did want to point out that I found interesting. So
Yes.
we're now starting to see some of the new crop of cards pop up with Upper Deck out there on the market and been out for a couple weeks now. You have all of the rookie class from the 1920 sets, and Jack Hughes seems to be leading the pack. The Upper Deck high gloss parallels that are numbered out of 10, there were 2 that sold just this past week. The number 2 out of 10 and the number 8 out of 10.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing about this was that the number 2 out of 10 was actually had a preliminary grade from BGS at a 9.5.
Hmm.
Now, if you don't know what a preliminary grade is, for those listening, you go to a show, um, PSA or BGS is there, Beckett, and you could take a card to be graded. Well, they don't necessarily slab it right there. They give it a pre-grade, and they'll put it in a case, and they'll put a nice gold label across the top, so that if you ever did send it in, they're automatically going to take that data that's already been done, apply it to the card, slab it, and off you go. So this has the preliminary 9.5. They were asking $5,000 for this. It's sold for 3, best offer. So $3,000 for a card that just came out a couple weeks ago. a parallel high gloss young gun of Jack Hughes, numbered out of 10 for $3,000. Now, the number 8 out of the 10 also sold, not graded. They were asking $5,000. It sold for $3,800. So I found that interesting that the ungraded one pulled an extra $800 out of that. So, just something interesting to see that, even the most modern cards, especially the rookies, and seems like Jack Hughes is leading the way when it comes to that, at least as of right now. But I will go back to what I keep saying. Cale Makar is going to win the Calder because that guy is a beast. So, start hoarding his cards if you're out there collecting. And that's all I have to say about that.
Shall we take a break from talking about collecting and talk about some stuff going on around the NHL?
I would love to do that.
Why don't we start with the Robert Bortuzzo? What a fun name to say, Bortuzzo. Suspension. So we got 4 games.
Sure.
So he cross-checks Victor Arvidsson in the back, not once, but twice. I thought the first one, I understand the defenseman's got to clear the crease. You got to keep guys away from the crease, out of the crease, away from the goalie, keeping them from screening the goalie or, if they're at a wide open net. Yeah, I mean, it's your responsibility. You can't let the forward camp out on the open side of the net and poke in a rebound or whatever. So the first cross-check, although I don't think cross-checking anybody in the back is a good thing to do.
But if you watch hockey, you see it happen all the time.
All the time. Yeah. I've been cross-checked in the back and in the sides and stuff when I play forward. I usually play defense. I even had a goalie trip me once. It was the funniest thing. I was camping out in front of the net, and I felt my skates taken out from underneath me. And it was the goalie who did that because I was open. I was waiting for a rebound, and I'm like, I was facing the play looking to see where the shot was coming from, and then all of a sudden I'm on my back looking up at the ceiling going, what just happened? But I understand the clearing the crease. What I think was particularly bad was as Arvidsson was trying to get up, he cross-checks him again, harder, like knocks him back down to the ice. And then as Arvidsson tries to get up, then Jake Binnington comes over and hits him with this stick. The poor guy just couldn't catch a break. I like this suspension. I haven't read the NHL's statement on this, but I think that like the first cross-check, okay, maybe not the greatest thing, but understandable. But the second one, it's like, okay, now the guy's lying in the crease. If Binnington tried to make a save and he fell over Arvidsson and the puck went in, then they'd all be like, oh, goaltender interference, right? Even though it was his own man who put him in the crease, so that wouldn't count. But he was trying to get up and get out of the crease, and then he got knocked down again. So, and he was seriously injured on the play, and, a suspension is a good thing.
I don't disagree, but I don't think it was enough, to be honest with you.
Fair.
Because Bortuzzo used to be a Penguin. I get that. And I'm not going to be like the Homer guy, once a Penguin, always a Penguin. Bortuzzo plays a tough brand of hockey, for lack of a better phrase, and he pushes it well past the edge of what's acceptable and what's not. Mm-hmm. That hit on Arvidsson, first of all, yeah, he's in the crease, and all of that happens all the time. The cross checks in the back. I think it's insane that it never gets called because some of them are completely blatant. I get it. Players have the padding that goes all the way up their back, so half the time you're hitting them in the back, it's really not doing anything. But it could. I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't. And obviously, here's a case where Arvidsson gets hurt. But if you watch this particular case, he knocks him flat. He cross-checks him. Mm-hmm. The referee puts his hand up to make the call to throw him in the box. Bortuzzo sees this and out of frustration hits him again. Already knowing that he's going to the box for the cross-check, he hits him again. That's a dirty play. And as Department of Player Safety said, it's not a hockey play. Whereas you can make a case that the first cross-check, yeah, he's trying to clear the crease. He's giving the guy, the once over, like it always happens. That was not a hockey play. He did it out of frustration, and it's ridiculous. But here's a guy that has a history. He was suspended, 2 preseason games in 18 for a high elbow on Michael Kempney when he played for the Caps. In 17, he's the one that took Kevin Fiala out, which took him out for the whole season when he hit him behind the net. And if you remember, he broke his femur and he had to be carted off the ice on a stretcher.
Yes.
That was Bortuzzo that hit him. Back in 14, he had a high hit that he got suspended 2 games for on Yager, back when Yager was doing his world tour of the NHL. So it's like the guy. Oh, and how could I even forget this? They hit on Brock Nelson from, what was that, from last year? Or no, 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He got fined for that one too. And if you ever go back and watch the video, he loses it. Brock Nelson's laying flat on his face on the ice, and he's just pounding the crap out of him in the back with his stick. So if you go back and watch the video, I think Sportsnet probably has it posted somewhere out there. So, but 4 games, okay, fine. Honestly, I don't think it's enough because, plays like that, we're trying to get the dangerous plays out of hockey, and I understand that. And as much as I like fighting and everything else, I get it. It's a more exciting product when you have the open ice and, just back and forth and scoring and everything else. And yeah, there's going to be hitting, but every player has basically taken it upon themselves to police themselves when it comes to this kind of thing. And there's really no reason for that, especially for injury. If you go out there deliberately trying to injure a guy, there's no need for that. There's absolutely no need for that.
No,
So,
I mean, still trying to find the happy medium between taking all the hitting out of the game and just letting them bludgeon each other to death.
Well, and here's the other question that it's raised. And if you look and if you read the hockey articles that are out there and listen to what, all the analysts and everything have been saying and on all the different shows and such, it raises the question of, okay, if we're going to do the whole punishment fits the crime kind of thing, do we tag the amount of time suspensions are based off of whether or not the players actually get hurt? And so there's many cases where guys take an elbow to the head or something like that, penalty's not called, player safety looks at it later, maybe fines the guy, player's not hurt. Well, in the case of something like this where a player is hurt, do you add extra games because he was injured? I don't know what the answer is, but I'd hate to see them actually go to something like that, because what's to stop a team from, taking a player that maybe is not a Victor Arvidsson who contributes quite a bit, but might be a lesser contributory player that goes out there, gets hit, is sort of fine, but they can live without him. They hold him out. Say he's injured.
Right.
Especially when you're playing a in-division rival. Oh, he's out 4 weeks. Okay, well, now the guy's in 2-game suspension went to 6 games. Great. So now our division rival, their best player's out for 6 games, or, not best player, but whoever does it, which could hurt them having that player out of the lineup, which could benefit your team because maybe that's the difference between them putting a couple extra points on their record. So I'm not saying teams would do that, but I'm not saying they wouldn't either. So
no, but I think it has to do with just I think the main thing is intent.
And that's really it. It boils down to, is this a hockey play and it's just an unfortunate side effect?
Right.
Or did you go out there and try to hurt the guy? And I think he went out there and tried to hurt the guy. So and he has a history of it. So between those two things, 4 games fine. 2 games would have been way too little. I think it probably should have been 6. That's just me. Yeah,
I mean 6. I think, like you said, if he's a repeat offender, 6 games sounds. I don't want to say it sounds right. You never really know with the NHL. They joke about the wheel of justice, and they just give it a spin. It's like, oh, you get a 2-game suspension. You get an 8-game suspension. You get a 10-game suspension, but then the Players Association gets to somehow talk it back down to 5 games. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know.
Well, and I understand the punishment has to fit the crime, and every situation's different, and they look at a
Right.
lot of different things when it comes to that kind of stuff. So the argument always happens after these things go down is, oh, well, how do we know what 2 games is? How do we know what 4 games is? How do we know this? How do we know that? And obviously, you leave that up to player safety to figure it out. And I don't know. Did they get it right by suspending him? Yeah, he's suspended. He's fined. The whole deal. Again, I don't. It was sloppy. It was a sloppy, dirty play. It should have been more. That's just my opinion.
Let's talk about Mike Babcock. You mentioned
Uh,
wanting to talk about the fallout on social media of Mike Babcock.
oh yeah, the social media outrage machine has struck again in the hockey world. First they blew up Don Cherry, and now this time it's Mike Babcock's the target. We talked last week about a little bit about his firing, and I'm sure everybody in the world knows by now. And as much as I despise and it turns my stomach to talk about Toronto all the time, this is kind of a significant thing because it's started to knock some dominoes down and expose the seedy underbelly of coaching around the NHL and relationships between players and coaches.
I love reading Mike Commodore's tweets about Babcock.
He's a crack up.
Well, and that's okay. I love it when people tell it how it is, even if they're a little inflammatory. That's okay. I mean, there's so much I'll give you for instance, when I write an article for the Hockey News and I'm talking to a player and I say to a player, who was your favorite teammate? Then they always give me that, oh, well, they were all special kind of answer. And I'm just like, yeah, I get it, but okay, that's not really something I can put in print.
Yeah,
That's just so.
That's not a sound bite I can use.
I mean, and I'm not looking for a sound bite. I'm looking for, something interesting, something significant. I mean, not to change the subject, but a couple months ago, I interviewed both of these players, former Blackhawks, Reggie Kerr and Peter Marsh. They were doing an autograph signing at a local card show. I had the chance to talk to both of them. Well, these guys were best friends, so they kind of came together to do autographs together, and they were just kind of like hanging out, having fun, talking with old fans, but they were like the best men at each other's weddings. But one was telling me, I think it was Marsh, he's saying when he got traded to the Blackhawks, the first time he met Reggie Kerr was when they were just going to be roommates. Like he was on the road, like he got traded and, it's like, oh yeah, go to this hotel room and like Reggie Kerr's in there. And like, they became friends. They roomed together on the road and, here they are 30 years later, 40 years later, and they're just at an autograph signing, but they're still cool with each other. So obviously they were each other's favorite teammates and best friends, and that's way cooler than, oh, they were all special, they were all good, right? Who was your favorite coach? Oh, well, every coach helped me in some way. Well, yeah,
Sure.
but I want to know about the asshole that like really or I want to know about the great coach, the one who pushed you the furthest. And it's funny
Right.
because like even Jeremy Roenick talks in his book about how he and Mike Keenan sometimes had a contentious relationship, but he says that Keenan really molded him into the player that he was, that he never really checked anybody when he played high school hockey. And then he became a more aggressive player when he got to the NHL, and it was because of Mike Keenan. That's the stuff I love to hear, not the like, oh, all my teammates are great, all my coaches are great, right? So when Mike Commodore just flips off and says, yeah, Mike Babcock's a jerk, and here's why, I love it. I'm sorry. I mean, I love it, especially because it's not just some random fan saying, oh, Mike Babcock's a jerk, right? Or even like when Jeremy Roenick says Mike Babcock does not like American players, and see, he's benching Chris Chelios, who's the greatest American player ever. It's like, well, at that point in Chelios' career, he is probably a third pair defenseman, which is awesome for a guy who's 46.
Right.
So I mean, it's like, okay, Jeremy, we get it. You're trying to say stuff, but I don't feel there was any basis to that. But when somebody who played for Babcock, well, kind of played for Babcock. Signed with the team and then got benched by Babcock. He's got, there's some weight to his words there.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because, Roenick making those comments back when he did, well, that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Saying he didn't like American players and this and that. And, his whole thing was, him and Chelios are friends. They've been friends for a long time.
Yep.
And he had firsthand knowledge of some of the uncouth things that Babcock had flat out said to Chelly. And, he was throwing that out there kind of. I don't even know if that was the subject of what they were even discussing at the time when he said that. And, immediately when they brought it up, Chelios was just like, oh, I would never say that. I don't know why Roenick would say that. Well, of course he's going to do that because Chelly's not going to say crazy stuff about his coach, especially when he's currently on the team.
Right.
And he's trying to get playing time, which he wasn't. But if you remember, Chelios came out later after he was done and flat out said that he doesn't know what the deal was, but Babcock for a veteran free agent coming to a team, Babcock was not a good coach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he threw that out there and he said, look, the guy is traditional. He wants things played his way. He wants the system his way, and it's his way or the highway.
You're talking about Chelios now,
yeah,
or about
yeah. And if you don't follow what he does, then that's what's going to happen to you. And so, he kind of led on that he wasn't a huge fan of him, but at the same time, Babcock's always said, well, he had a decent relationship together and this and that. I mean, even Henrik Zetterberg, who you never get like crazy sound bites from him, but he even said when Babcock left and went to Toronto that, it was time to move on.
Mm-hmm.
So is that just, it is what it is kind of thing? Or is it more than that? I mean, look, Commodore hates him, flat out hates him.
Yeah.
You can read his tweets, but he's talked in numerous interviews about how much he just despises the guy. Mark Frazier doesn't like him either, and he jumped to Mike Commodore's defense when he started spouting up all this stuff about him getting canned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for various reasons. Jeff O'Neill was even on TV, and he talked about how he wasn't a big fan of him, thought he was a jerk,
Mm-hmm.
thought he was a horrible coach and classless, especially with the whole thing of him benching Mike Modano when he was trying to get 1,500 games. Modano finished his career with 1499 because Babcock basically benched him and wouldn't put him in and scratched him every game that he was available at the end of his career. So he never got that 1,500th game. So, people say, oh, well, this is just him evolving and he became a different coach in Toronto. I don't think so. I think he's always been like that. I think the information that's out there has always been like that. But really, what really sparked a lot of this stuff, especially in the last few days, is the fact that, yeah, he was fired. Is it all his fault? No. He put some on the players, maybe, probably. But at the same time, he lost that locker room.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have a below expectation start to the year. Yes. They lost Game 7 against the Bruins last year. Those are two things that, those are negatives. But like I said, he's the old school coach. He motivates his players based off of criticism and fear. That's really what it is. You mentioned Keenan earlier. He's the same. He was the same style. I mean, the guy never smiles. He looks always angry. You're never going to get kind of like the off the cuff, hey, I'm not really this hard exterior guy. I'm really a softy inside. Yeah, you got some sound bites from Babs once in a while, but no, he never led off to that. And when you treat players like that, like they're inferior to you and they're subpar regardless of their talent, like, they're 10-year-old peewee hockey players, you're going to lose the locker room. And he did. And I think the whole story with Marner is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that, when it got tweeted out or posted, I forget what outlet posted it. It was probably Post Media up in Canada, but told the story about he pulled Marner aside in his rookie year and he asked him to rank the players on the team from who works the hardest to who he thought was the laziest.
Mhm.
I mean, here's a rookie. Can you imagine a rookie, let alone any player, being called in by your coach? All right, I want you to tell me everybody on the team that you think's a piece of trash and rank them in order, one through whatever. I mean, it's an old school, just like a crazy thing. And since all this came out, Elliot Friedman from Sportsnet and I think Darren Dreger both reached out to him for comment, and he admitted, yeah, I did that. And I apologized. It probably wasn't the best thing to do. But what I was really getting at with the whole entire thing was that, I'm trying to motivate him to uncover what he feels is a good and not good work ethic. And it's supposed to be this motivational factor in all of this. Look,
Whenever you have a player, whenever you have a player do something like that, you're trying to divide them and not unite them. And that's a terrible thing.
well, and that's exactly it, because this wasn't something between the two of them. This is something that Babcock turned around and took to the team. I don't know how it was presented to them, but he took it to the team and players found out about it. And essentially a bunch of players since then have, or at the time, came to Marner's defense and they're like, look, he was put in a bad situation for that. We don't hold anything against him. And, they eventually moved on for that. But
Right.
who does that? I mean, you don't do that to a player. I mean, think of this in terms of a business. If you're running a business and you call an employee in to basically rat out the rest of your employees, how does that, I mean, really, how does that look as you as a leader? The fact that you have to do something like that and can't recognize things on your own. And how does that do going up the chain to the people that are your bosses? I mean, look, not only did Babcock supposedly apologize for the whole thing, but Lou Lamoriello apologized for it too, which means one thing. He knew about it. The organization knew about it, and they still let it happen and let it go on. So, I mean, Babcock lost that locker room. He doesn't know how to coach young guys, and that's the worst part because most of your lineup is
Young guys.
young guys.
Speed
I
now.
mean,
It's speed and
it's
skill
speed,
and
it's skill.
youth. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Those are your most important players, and not only that, those are the players making all of your roster salary.
mhm.
You want to piss those guys off and try to be like this dictator type ruler? No.
It sounds like Mike Babcock couldn't reach the veteran players and he couldn't reach the rookie players. He couldn't reach the really young guys and he couldn't reach the guys, the Mike Madonals or the Mike Commodores that were like at the end of their career. And you got to be able to coach everybody. I'm not a coach. I'm not a hockey coach. I helped once at my girlfriend's team practice, but I was more of just a human prop than a coach. But
a,
I'm
a human prop.
Well, a human prop, basically, where the coach would pass me the puck and I'd pass it back to him and he would like demonstrate something and I would try to help him and look like I was doing what I was doing. But I have been a teacher for a long time, and Tim, you were a teacher too. So I see a lot of similarities.
I like to forget about that part of my life.
Okay. Well, I can't forget about me being a teacher as I look at this stack of tests that needs to be graded and got a stack of projects that I need to finish grading. And anyway, so I like to see some similarities between coaching and teaching.
Oh, no doubt.
And so the thing is that just thinking of like my most recent web design class, I know who the hard workers are. I know who the lazy ones are. I know the ones who are just trying to get by, and I know the ones that are trying maybe a little too hard because they want to get a really great grade in the class. Like they're doing everything they can to get an A. And it's a 10-week class, and I had this pretty much figured out by week 4, week 5, after seeing him once a week and rating 4 or 5 assignments, whatever. Now, I know hockey's a lot different, coaching's a lot different, but you get to know the people that you're around, and this is me just knowing them once a week, not every day, like you are when you're a coach. You get to know your players, you get to know your team, and I think, well, one, I think if I were to like pull aside a student and just say, hey, which of your classmates are the lazy ones and which are the overachievers, that puts them in a bad spot because they want to be helpful, or in the case of like a player, they don't want to get sent back to juniors or minors or kept up and then benched for 30 games, whatever. So that's a horrible place to put a person. But then the other thing too is, again, being a teacher, is that I've had to learn over the years how to be able to teach everybody. I'm probably the most comfortable teaching college students because they're old enough to pay attention and learn if they want to learn, but they're still young enough to kind of follow orders. I've had older students, adult students, and I try not to be bossy with anybody, but there was a different methodologies that I'd have to use for teaching them. I taught 7th and 8th grade students. There were different methodologies I needed to use for teaching them. And I think a good teacher can teach all different levels. You're going to be better at some than others, and I get that. But I think if you're a hockey coach, you need to know how to coach people from 18 to 42. It's just how it is, and he doesn't do that. It's like a lot of these coaches, they just kind of get in their little comfort zone where they want their certain type of player, and that's it. So they draft they use their first round pick to draft a really good player, but it's not the type of player that the coach wants or likes to coach. That's on the coach, not on the player, obviously.
I totally agree with all that. And there's totally different personalities from one person to the next. But when you're on a team, the team mentality kicks in. And, I don't want to cliche Three Musketeers, all for one for all kind of thing. But it's kind of like that on a team.
Right.
And anybody that's ever played professional, not even professional, but any sports, where you're on a team, you have teamwork, you have camaraderie. The players that you're out there playing with day in and day out, that's your family.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as you can, and you may not get along with everybody, but when you have a job to do, you're all out there doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that a whole entire team can just fail to respond and there's no one there that can help spread the message that's coming down from the top. Right there tells you that something's definitely wrong here. And everybody's, because it's Toronto. Look, no one's going to succeed in Toronto. Let's just throw that out there right now. There's too much media, there's too many microphones and cameras in your face. So if you want to keep a job, don't work for Toronto. I'm just saying that right now. And the next guy they hire, the guy that's in there now, Sheldon Keefe, nothing against him, but the clock's already ticking. And, the clock was ticking with Babcock too. I think the writing on the wall was on the wall when Lou left, when Lamoriello left. I mean, he was Babcock was his guy. So, and it's the next man up because the regime that's in charge now, they wanted Keefe in there. They wanted Sheldon Keefe. He was their guy of the future. Well, now they got him. So, they've started off pretty decent. Guys have seemed to be responding to what he's doing to try to motivate his team and get them moving and stuff. You don't see he hasn't had any of the weird kind of relationships that have been reported. When Babcock took over, there was the whole split between him and Matthews, and it was no secret about any of that. And Babcock even went and visited Matthews in his house in Arizona over the summer, just to try to like hash out whatever their deal was before the season started. And I remember Matthews saying that, he wanted to have a voice on the team as a leader, and he wanted to voice his opinion. And just look at the amount of ice time. I mean, Matthews' ice time is nowhere near where it should be for who is considered an elite center in the
Right.
league. It's nowhere near. So obviously Babcock didn't take heed to that because it's his way or the highway. And
Right.
it became, for him, it became the highway. And so now we're seeing all this fallout and players coming out of the woodwork saying how they didn't like him. I mean, yeah, there's a few out there that are responding and saying, he was a great coach, yada, yada, yada.
Mhm.
And you never know. He may get another job. He may get another job pretty quick. There's all these rumors saying that Seattle should look to him for being the coach. I
Oh,
don't agree. I
no.
don't agree at all. You need a younger coach with a lot of newer ideas to play in today's NHL. Babcock's the guy that you bring in like later on down the road where you've already established the team and
Right.
you're just that one little step from the edge of becoming great. That's the
Right.
Babcock team. You know, Seattle doesn't really need that. And so, all these players are speaking out and speaking their mind now, and it's kind of snowballed into this other stuff, um, which you brought up before we started talking with the whole Akim Aliu thing that's popped up, which is roundabout kind of way related to this.
Yeah. As Bill Peters, the current, but maybe not for long, coach of the Calgary Flames, had worked under Mike Babcock as an assistant. I actually read up on this morning. So what had happened was back during the 2009-10 season, Akim Aliu, a player who was on the Rockford Ice Hogs, who is black, claims that Peters had used the N-word a couple of times in the locker room when describing the music that Aliu was playing. I guess he was playing some hip hop music in a locker room while they were getting ready for a game or a practice or whatever. And he just said, like, turn that N-word stuff off or something to that extent. Aliu claims that his career kind of went downhill before it even started because here he was a 20-year-old rookie in the AHL. He was in his first full season with the Rockford Ice Hogs. He had played a few games the season before and the season before that, but this was like his first full season with Rockford. The coach comes in, and like I said, Aliu is black. I mean, he was born in Nigeria, but he his parents moved to Ukraine when he was really young, and then he moved to Canada when he was 7. So, I mean, he's Canadian, but he's also was born overseas, and he's black, and he had different experiences. He stood out because during junior hockey one season, he refused to take part in a team hazing. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I think hazing is stupid. It's terrible. It's a discussion for another time because we could just get into that. So he just basically stood up for himself and said, no, I'm not going to participate in this. What had happened was that Bill Peters made comments about the music. I'm going to see if I can find the tweet that I found here.
Well,
Um,
supposedly he said it more than once.
But here, he walked in before a morning pregame skate and said, "Hey, Akim, I'm sick of you playing that N-word shit." And then when Aliu went to talk to him in the coach's office, Peters just basically said, "No, you need to find different music," was basically what he said. I know 2 former Rockford Ice Hog players have corroborated the story and said, yeah, he did indeed say that. I remember that. Ice Hogs captain Jake Dowell went and talked with Peters about that. We don't know what he said because just hasn't been able to be reached for comment. Dowell was a Blackhawk prospect. He did play all of the 10-11 season with the Blackhawks, and he kind of bounced around the NHL for a bit. And he was with the Ice Hogs again. So, I mean, he was a well-known, as far as Ice Hog players go, he was well-known. Because the first thing I thought to myself when I'm reading this article, I said, what did the team captain do? Like, I would think about that because the team captain is that link between the players and the coach, and he has to be the one that stands up for his players and sometimes has to stand up to the coaches or stand up to management. I mean, it's a tough responsibility. I mean, you're a leader on the ice, you're a leader off the ice. And so I was thinking, what did the team captain do? I can't say what I would have done in that situation, because when you're in the minors, you're only a heartbeat away, and it goes back between, oh, you don't want to rock the boat, you just want to fit in, you just want to shut up and do what you're told, because these guys can make or break your career. And I mean, it was the same with, like, who was the coach of Montreal? He was like, he bounced around for a while and he came back to the Habs. Help me out here.
Michel Therrien?
Thank you, Therrien. Yes. So Therrien was
Nailed it.
You did. I mean, you knew who I was talking about when I said that one Montreal coach, right? Not Pat Burns, the other one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was coach of the Penguins and got fired. They brought Bilesma in and they won a cup.
So
there you
Therrien basically partially wrecked Terry Ryan's career. Terry Ryan was a high pick with the Canadiens in the mid '90s, and he stood up to Therrien, and he pretty much got buried.
That's kind of what Aliu is alluding. Aliu is alluding to is the fact that after this whole incident went down and some other back and forth things and him standing up for himself, Peters apparently wrote a letter to Blackhawks management and said, "You got to get rid of this guy."
Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, he got shipped off to the ECHL team. And
yeah, and then they traded him, traded him to the Atlanta Thrashers.
Right. So he went to Atlanta.
That ended that season.
Right. And so if you look at his career since then, I mean, he's played 7 NHL games total?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's been relegated to AHL or ECHL teams?
Yeah.
Was he labeled as, oh, here's a troublemaker? This guy, you get him in your organization, it's going to be awful. So let's just dump him and push him down. And because I mean, really, in his first year when he was playing, he had numbers that could have pushed him up.
Yeah, he was
got him a roster spot on the big club.
Yeah, I mean, he was. He had 11 goals and 6 assists for 17 points in 48 games, according to Aliu. He wasn't getting any power play time, but he said he was on pace to get a 20-goal season, which is admirable for a 20-year-old rookie in the AHL. And yeah, he got sent to the ECHL. I guess what had happened was Peters approached him later in a practice, and Aliu just said something to the effect of "Don't talk to me." And then after that, he sent him to the minors, and then he was traded to Atlanta. He actually ended up playing it for the Chicago Wolves, because at the time they were affiliated with the Atlanta Thrashers. Then he bounced around to different AHL and ECHL teams. He did get a shot with the Flames. I know later on he was in training camp with the Buffalo Sabres, and believe he played some preseason games for them. So, I mean, he was always kind of on the cusp of an NHL career, but he wasn't. And, I mean, it could be for a lot of things, but yeah, I mean, he could have been very well been labeled. I mean, we talk about these old school coaches, do what I say or else, right? Like a Mike Babcock, right? And we still have a lot of that mentality today. I don't want to disrespect the guy, and I'm not trying to say he's the same, but like Scotty Bowman, everybody talks about what a great coach Scotty Bowman was, and then they call him a taskmaster, right? Like when you're a winning coach, if you're a losing coach, you're a slave driver. And if you're a winning coach, you're a taskmaster. But you're still the same guy, right? It just depends on what players you're coaching or driving or tasking. So I actually was really excited about Aliu. I mean, I remember hearing about what happened in junior hockey, and I said, I like this guy. He's an individual. He's interesting to me. I mean, he was a second round pick, which is pretty high up there. I mean, he was coming to the Blackhawks. I think I wanted to see him play for the Blackhawks. I actually was very excited that he was going to play for the Blackhawks. And you'll even remember a couple of years ago, like I got a Panini redemption card for Akim Aliu autographed card, which I never got. And Panini ended up sending me a different card like 4 years later. But I was just like, hey, I like this guy. Not only was he a Blackhawk pick, he played for the Chicago Wolves. And it makes me sad to see this kind of stuff. I mean, even as 10 years ago, but still, I mean, I think of this like 1980s, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be like, what coach wasn't saying racist shit in the 1980s, right?
Sure.
That would just kind of be like my knee-jerk reaction. 10 years ago, I mean, maybe we weren't as woke of a culture or as trying to be PC or whatever. But I mean, the thing is that when you're the coach, and this is going to go back to my experience as a teacher, but I see a lot of relevance about this. And actually, I thought this was funny because I was watching the statement that Brad Treveling made yesterday. And, when you play a video on NHL.com, they always put a little commercial before it, which kind of pisses me off. There was a commercial, it was an anti-bullying commercial before Brad Treveling's statement to the press yesterday. And I was just like, oh my God, that cannot be more relevant, because bullying implies that there's a power structure. You have somebody who has power over another person. It could even be an in group and an out group. It could be that kind of, you and I, we tease each other, but we're not bullying each other. But like if a teacher teases a student, that's bullying, right? Even if it's not physical, even if it's not racial. I mean, even something that I did that was not the greatest thing was, like, I remember I was teaching a blogging class, and one of my students, I was co-teaching this class with another teacher, and one of my students just made a mention that she watched like the Real Housewives, and I'm like, you watch the Real Housewives? How can you watch that stuff, right? Like, and I said that, and then my co-teacher pulled me aside and said, oh, you shouldn't really say that. I'm like, why not? I was just kind of joking around with her. She's like, well, no, but did you notice she got really quiet for the rest of the class, and she kind of froze up, and she's like, you're her teacher. You can't do that sort of thing. And I said, you know what? You're right. Because it wasn't like I had like said something like terrible, but I just kind of like poked fun at what she liked. And I thought about that. I said, yeah, I'm the teacher. I need to be above that sort of thing. I need to be kind of neutral about that. And I'll tell you, a couple of years later, I had a student who was talking about, she watched the Kardashians, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and she had this like mobile app on her phone that would kind of like tell her what was, it was to keep up with the Kardashians, like what was going on, right? And
Yeah.
she said to me, she was like, she's explaining this to me because I said, okay, I want everybody to do a research study about an app or a website or something, and she was telling me this idea and she wanted to do it, but she was looking down and she was just like, oh, I know that's kind of stupid. And I said, it's not stupid. I said, you like it, and that's all that matters. I said, I collect pieces of cardboard with hockey players on them. Everybody likes what they like, and then she kind of perked up after that, and then she did this project about that, and it was a good project. So I think that, like, yeah, when there's a power structure, you have to be extra sensitive how you treat the people that report to you that you're responsible for. And Peters did not do that. And Aliu was 20. And I remember when I was 20, I put up with a lot of shit from other people that I wouldn't put up now at 40. But when you're 20, you just think this is the way the world works. You don't know any better. And your feelings might get hurt, and you might be sad, and you might feel that the repercussions from that for a long time. And that's what Peters did to Aliu, and he made him feel like he was less a part of a team. He used a racial slur to describe the music that Aliu was playing. I mean, if there was a problem with the music, it should have been between teammates. Like, oh no, he's got the box. I need to put in my country music before he gets to the gets to the boom box and puts on rock or R&B or whatever.
No, and I agree. And it looks like the hammer's going to fall on this one. Rumor is he's going to get canned, but the investigation's going on, and the Flames haven't said anything other than they're still investigating. So
it should be interesting to see what the Flames do. I mean, they're already. I understand that as of this morning, that Peters was not at the team practice, that the assistant coach was running the team practice. I'll be very interested to know what they have to say, what they do.
the only thing that scares me about all this
Yeah.
is this are these the first dominoes that are falling and are going to become okay, every player is going to now start complaining about their coach, saying their coach said this and saying they said that, and they made me feel this big and all this kind of stuff. And, like you said, bully culture is very prevalent in the minds of the, as we keep calling it, the outrage culture that we live in. Is this just going to just start an avalanche of issues?
Why not? bring it. I say, you know what? I watch hockey for the shooting and the stick handling and the goals and the big saves and the hitting. I don't watch it because, the bullying of the players by the coaches or the hazing of players by other players.
And I don't either.
No,
because
obviously
I'm not,
none of us do.
as much as I love to watch Jerry Springer back in the day, that's not why I tune in and watch hockey. I tune in because I love the game. But all of this is part of the game for players and coaches. This is the reality that they live in, and it's going to carry over into their lives. I mean, look, I don't know what's going on and no one's released the information, but I'm sure you saw this week Bobby Ryan went into the the player assistance program.
Yeah.
So we don't know what's wrong. But, could be addiction, could be, whatever. But the fact remains, mental health is a huge focus of, the player's lifestyle. And if there are players that legitimately feel threatened by the organization that they work for, or generally don't feel comfortable around the people that are supposed to be their coaches and bosses, or even colleagues as other players, what's gonna end up happening?
What can they do
Their
about
play,
that? Yeah.
well, their play on the ice might decline because they're thinking about other things, or they feel a certain way about something, and it's just gonna turn into that. And again, I hate to be the negative guy, but just like with coaches faking injuries, like I was talking about earlier, with players to try to get extra suspensions, what's to stop a player or a multitude of players that maybe not like their coach and decide, you know what, let's, we know how to get rid of them and come up with something. I mean, it's always been that, I don't want to say it's always been the good old boys network or whatever, but
kind of has, though.
Maybe, but just like the whole Vegas slogan, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in the locker room generally should stay in the locker room, because it's nothing that can't be worked out amongst the people involved. The problem is the media is in there too now. There's reporters everywhere. There's cameras. There's microphones. Everything gets picked up. Everything gets reported. Players post on social media. I mean, I think this is going to get worse. I honestly do.
Peters could have, you say what happens in a locker room stays in a locker room, and they could work it out themselves. Peters never worked it out. His answer was to demote the player instead of try to work it out with the player.
Yeah, and in this case, it didn't work the way it probably should have, and now you're going to see somebody pay the price, probably with their job.
Right. Well, but I mean, Aliu could have had a better career. I mean, maybe not. Maybe he got every chance. Maybe he got enough chances in Calgary and he didn't shine there, and that was it. I'm not a scout, so we always wonder why a player doesn't make it or why they don't stick around at the top level. And I don't know. I mean, maybe he was blacklisted, maybe or labeled or whatever. But yeah, I don't mind. Let it come. Let's see what happens. Like, let's. It'd be okay to change some of this culture, and if this is the start of it, awesome.
Well, I guess there's nothing left to say about that. Then we'll see.
Yeah,
maybe next week's show there'll be 5 other coaches that have been fired for calling their players names or something. Who knows?
Well, I would love to know what you guys all think, all 14 of you, if I counted correctly.
There's going to be double that after this one.
Hopefully. But I'd love to know what you think about this. So, leave a comment, or you can message us at Twitter. I'm at PuckJunk. Tim is at TheRealDFG. Or you can leave a comment. We want to know what you think about any of these topics that we talked about, but specifically about Peters and Aliu. And until next time, thank you for listening to the Puck Junk Podcast.
For more hockey goodness, follow us on Twitter at PuckJunk.